We begin with a biker gang in the state of Georgia, the largest indictment of a motorcycle gang in that state, as 16 people have so far been arrested in relation to this biker gang and various criminal misdeeds. So, as will surprise no one, some biker gangs are a little bit more nefarious. Some, of course, are just clubs for people who like to enjoy motorcycles, as there are clubs for people who like to drive various kinds of cars. Porsche, for example, has a club for people who like to drive Porsches, and so forth and so on. And some people like to drive and ride around in motorcycles. That can be fun. But some of them, of course, are actually gangs, as we learned from Sons of Anarchy, that great show that was on TV. And this has led to an indictment relating to one such gang that is really just basically a massive RICO. So let's learn a little bit more about this. Law enforcement officials in the state of Georgia have announced the largest indictment in that state in the state's history, with the arrest of 16 members of the Southeast Georgia chapter of the Outcast motorcycle gang. So might be doing some criminal misdeeds in the motorcycle gang. The arrests and indictments were announced Monday by the state's attorney general, working with the Judicial Circuit's district attorney and Richmond police chief and other state and federal investigators. The 13-month investigation resulted in recovery of about $180,000 of cash and seizure of 71 guns so far. So yes, this has been an indictment that has been long percolating, involving both state and federal authorities, of course, because biker gangs have a tendency of engaging in drug deals and other things that transverse state lines, sometimes with robberies, sometimes with other violence. And so this is what we've got so far. 13-month, multi-month investigation with these people indicted, and I imagine the feds will not be far behind with some sort of RICO, because that's what RICO was invented for, right? RICO was invented for the mob. And this is basically just the mob in a different form. So I would imagine the feds won't be too far behind. The historic indictment is a testament to the results we're able to achieve when all levels of law enforcement work together. Keep the people of our state safe. Occasionally it does happen where the various law enforcement agencies work nicely with each other. By leveraging our resources, we can more effectively dismantle growing gang networks that are terrorizing our communities and endangering the lives of our most vulnerable citizens. The gang members so far are accused of committing armed robbery and shooting in June last year of Flasco's House Bar and Grill and Red Roof Inn on US 17 in Richmond. Yeah. So this is also would be viable under what's called the viable under federal law as well, because the federal law also prohibits any sort of criminal misdeeds that affect interstate commerce. And when you're going after, for example, an inn where people stay through interstate commerce, classic sort of guidelines. So that would also give the feds an in to charge robbery under the Hobbs Act. The 6 victims were associated with a rival motorcycle club, so a little bit of turf war going on. The investigation turned up evidence of criminal activity by Outcast gang not only in Bryan County, but other counties of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina as well. So also giving some jurisdiction to the feds if they want to get involved. And also those respective states would also have the ability to indict as well, because the crimes occurred in their jurisdiction. So that's just by way of legal edification how this works as sort of multiple jurisdictional criminal practice. Every time you commit a crime, basically the standard rule is as long as you commit an element of the crime in the jurisdiction has jurisdiction over the entire offense. So if you try to get around this by I'm going to be clever, I only commit part of the crime in this state and another part of the crime in this other state and another part of the crime in this state. So no part of the crime actually is complete. And any one state, it's South Carolina, for example, or Georgia, for example, can't come after me because I didn't complete each and every element of the crime in this jurisdiction. Well, the states are pretty smart about this. And most states say, yes, we can criminally prosecute you as long as you completed every element of the crime somewhere and at least one element of the crime occurred in our jurisdiction. So rather than being very clever, because no state can charge you, every state can charge you, plus the feds. So you're now looking at criminal charges from all these jurisdictions. And then the question about prosecution order is just whoever gets to you first is the standard rule. So, of course, states can defer to each other. They can defer to the federal government. The federal government defers to the states, depending on respective political interests. But the legal rule is whoever gets to you first. But then the other states get to have their turn too. So after you complete your time in one system, you then go to the other system and the other system and the other system, and you just bounce all around in the different jails. It's one way to tour the country, not the way that I would recommend. The Outcast Medical Gang has 67 chapters in the country, including 4 in Georgia. Those indicted includes the gang's president, vice president, the secretary, and the gang's business manager and sergeant at arms. So basically, it's just Sons of Anarchy. Please see Sons of Anarchy for further information about this indictment. Working with the governor, the state created the first statewide gang prosecution unit last year. So we were so concerned about this that normally we do things on a county by county basis, but these people transverse state lines, or county lines at least, and state lines, it turns out. So we need a multiple jurisdictional practice. So fine. Since working with the gang unit, the unit has indicted 83 gang members across of Georgia. So yeah, we're trying to get after the gangs. It's just basically the mafia in different words, in different form. You know, maybe less with the Italians, more with the bikers, but whatever. It's the same fundamental principle, right? We got an organization that's corrupt and an enterprise for the purposes of a little extortion, a little bit of drug use, whatever. And yeah, we're coming after them, and the feds are probably not far behind. Fun for all. Thus, that brings us to the end of the story of the biker gang in Georgia, where 16 people have so far been arrested in relation to this, as it relates to one chapter of a nationwide organization. Now, it might very well be the case that it's just this one chapter that's corrupt, but you can bet your bottom dollar that they are looking into this even further, right? And it's like, well, we'll start with this indictment. And the indictments themselves might cause people to act in certain ways because they're worried about what will happen to them and maybe cause them to make a mistake. So I would bet the feds and a lot of other jurisdictions are looking at a lot of these gangs right now and watching their movements really carefully to see how far deep the corruption goes. Is it just this one chapter that's a bad seed? Or is it maybe the entire biker gang? Or maybe some other fraction of it? How deep does it go? So 16 indictments so far, but I wouldn't expect this to be the end, nor would I even expect it to be the end as it relates to these 16 people, because I would imagine they're facing charges in other jurisdictions, or will be facing charges in other jurisdictions in their future. Probably won't end well for them. And that, for the moment, brings us to the end of discussion of this story.